Welcome back to Curiosity Over Chaos. Today, we're going to dive into this whole idea of how do we grow our capacity to hold ambiguity without freezing. I don't know about you, but most days when I open up my news feed or when I think about the idea that AI might be taking my job or that social media is squashing my children's brains, I go into mostly freeze mode. And then eventually I might move a little bit into fight mode. I have this thing where I think that I am the person from The Walking Dead that is holding the machete and kind of just like walks through, swiping heads off of all the zombies. Sometimes I feel like that. But what I'm really interested in learning how to become more of is curious in the midst of all of this chaos. I feel like the machete thing just maybe isn't very good for me, and so I have dove all in on pulling from my experience in 20 years of working inside corporate and helping organizations lead massive changes to my personal interest in neuroscience and somatics to really kind of piece together those two worlds and find a more curious way for all of us to move through this future of uncertainty with just a little bit more calm, like a little bit more ease and pace. We don't know what is ahead of us. And that makes us feel very frightened and uncertain at times, but it doesn't have to. So, curiosity over chaos is all about helping us to build the tools and to find the resources that we need to bring a bit more curiosity into our daily lives and help ease some of these transitions and major transformations that we are walking through. And so today we're going to dive all the way into how do you grow your capacity to hold ambiguity without freezing. In every one of these episodes, we're going to take the approach of naming the thing, like what is this moment asking of us? What do we need to be able to cultivate in our lives to walk through this moment? Two, what is the condition? Maybe it was something you learned in school. Maybe it was something our companies or corporations are built on. Maybe it's something your parents just told you you needed to do. What is the condition that's keeping you stuck or holding you where you are? And then we're going to talk about one curious move that we can do and practice in order to help us move through and into what the future is asking of us with a bit more curiosity. And so when you think about being able to hold ambiguity without freezing, let me give you an example of what that looks like. I see this all the time inside organizations where you take forward a new idea. A team has worked really, really hard to bring forward a really thought through plan, but they also don't necessarily have all of the answers for what's going to happen. And so they take it into the boardroom or the conference room and they're sharing their idea, and all of a sudden, holes start to be poked. We're talking leaders saying, well, what if this happens? Or did you study this? Or have you projected out what it will be 10 months from now? And all of a sudden, you start to see people in that room freeze. Now, there are some people who don't freeze. There's some people who the curious question is just fine, or for whom someone who can say, I don't know the answer to that, but let me go and find out. People, more often than not, people have a tendency to freeze, fight, flight, or fawn in the face of adversity, or in particular in the face of uncertainty. I also see this happening with organizations who don't know what to do about AI coming. And it's not just organizations, it's leaders and it's individuals. You've got some people burying their heads in the sand. You've got other people ready to run. You have some people running too fast. And so a lot of people are going into these nervous system responses in the face of uncertainty. But what the future is going to need from us and what this moment is asking of us is to not be in that reactionary mode. It is asking us to be able to hold ambiguity, to sit with uncertainty and not move into an immediate response, be that freeze, fight, flight, or fawn. And in particular, if we focus on freezing for just a minute, if you are able to move through the ambiguity, to go ahead and take steps, even though you feel uncertain, that will become your biggest differentiator and your biggest success factor because we are not going to have all the answers. And honestly, no one is. We are going to have to figure this out as we go. And it's going to be a series of trial and error for us to define what happens. But the key is there are ways to calm our nervous systems, to help us be able to sit and stand in that uncertainty if we look at it with curiosity. And if we start to cultivate a daily practice of curiosity, where instead of the uncertain or the ambiguous or the adverse poking holes from someone, instead of that sending you into fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, it sends you into questioning. It sends you into an excitement of like, yeah, wait a minute, what if? Or how could that be? Or if that happens, what then? And so, my curious move for you from this video today is to start thinking about ambiguity as your friend and to start expecting it everywhere. And you can start small, like maybe you're going to expect ambiguity in your weekend plans, something super safe where you could just get your head around the idea that maybe your weekend plans are not going to go exactly as you thought they would. If that feels okay and you can kind of get behind that ambiguity, then you can start practicing expecting ambiguity in some of your more important components of your life. Let's call it work. Whatever work project you're working on right now, how might you start to expect ambiguity already? So instead of waiting for the uncertain thing to happen, how do you start building a pivot into your plan now? And my curious move for you is to ask a few questions of yourself, or maybe your team, or maybe even your family. Start asking them a few questions when you're in the early phase of a project development. And that could look something like, what don't we know that might happen? What are we anticipating that might not happen? And play out some of those scenarios. And you don't have to solve them. This is not about coming up with a multi year scenario plan for every single thing that you do in your life. This is about sitting with those questions and allowing yourself to find some grace and space in just playing, asking the questions, seeing where things might go awry, having fun imagining what else could be possible so that you aren't pigeonholed into this one way of thinking. So, the big takeaway is you absolutely can hold ambiguity and uncertainty, and you don't have to freeze or fight someone or just like fall over because it's happening. If you can apply a little bit of curiosity to the idea that you can move through this uncertainty, that you can take action amidst ambiguity, and just see what happens, see how that flows for you. Let us know in the comments, like and subscribe, getting new to all this YouTube stuff. But let me know what works for you and what doesn't work for you as you step into this.